Good afternoon. 406 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, I've got Will Scharf with us, former federal prosecutor, an attorney for President Trump, and a candidate for attorney general in Missouri. Talk about this latest effort by Jack Smith to meddle in the election quickly. He's telling the Supreme Court he has to hurry up and meddle in the election. Will Scharf will break that down for us. And then John Daniel Davidson is here from the Federalist at 5 o'clock as the Intel Committee in the House says that they have a very urgent national security threat that every member of Congress needs to know about. What is really going on there? And what should they be focused on? John Daniel Davidson joins us coming up. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I can't tear myself away from big fat Fanni Willis today down in Fulton County, Georgia, hanging on for dear life to this case that she thought was going to make her the most famous American of all time. She was going to destroy Donald Trump in his presidential campaign. She said he was basically like a member of the mob, guilty of a RICO violation, organized crime to subvert the American election. And instead today, she finds herself in the crosshairs, rightfully so, of a lot of scrutiny about the way that she took taxpayer money and spent it on her lover, hired him to work on this Trump case. And now she has spent the last, let's say, hour on the stand, practically, defending all of this, saying, yeah, of course he paid for all these fancy trips to fancy locations and restaurants and all sorts of things, but I always split it with him. Oh, did you? You always split it with him all the time? Oh, yes, I made sure to cover my end. Well, how'd you cover it? I obviously have receipts for that. Oh, no receipts. What do you mean no receipts? How do you have no receipts? There must be some evidence. No, I paid him in cash. What do you mean you paid him in cash? Okay, so you went to an ATM? No, I didn't go to the ATM. What do you mean you didn't? Where'd you get the cash from? Oh, I always keep a ton of cash at home. My dad always told me, keep a ton of cash at home. Okay, but again, are you following the logic of this explanation? At some point, she will have had to withdraw this cash from somewhere. There would be a record of all of the mountains of cash she's keeping at home, Scrooge McDuck style. You know? She's like, I just have a lot of cash on me all the time. Okay? Seriously, that is her explanation today. And she's freaking out. She already yelled, I'm not on trial. They're on trial, meaning Donald Trump, for trying to steal our democracy. She said that even scrutinizing her is a threat to democracy. She also announced today that she doesn't like wine. She prefers Grey Goose. I swear, this is real from the stand today. She talked about, when she receives cash, sometimes people say, if they need a G, I give them $1,000. A G. She said in her testimony today. And just a few minutes ago, let me see if I can't play some of this audio for you. It's just too good. It's just too good. She was asked about her habits with cash and how she apparently paid off Nathan Wade, her lover, with all this money when they would go on cruises. She'd just hand him, she'd give him $1,000 bills or something. She's just, here's some more cash for you to cover everything. And I did notice Will Chamberlain pointing out on Twitter here in the last few minutes is a little weird, right? Like, she's an attorney, and if the idea is that she's trying to make sure that she covers all of her bases, right? There's no conflict of interest because she's paying out of her own pocket. Wouldn't you want to establish a paper trail? Right? Corey, am I right about this? So if you're spending money explicitly to avoid conflict of interest claims, you would keep a paper trail to support that when it finally came up. Hey, wait a second. I see you went on this cruise with Nathan Wade. Don't you worry. Got the paperwork right here. I covered it. That's not what's happening here. She's insisting, oh, no, I've got this. I'm using cash. There is no record whatsoever, but you're going to have to take me on my word on this. Scout's honor, I paid for all of this. It didn't come out of Nathan Wade's bank account. And by the way, if it did come out of Nathan Wade's bank account and he was covering all of this, that's self-dealing because she's paying him an immense amount of taxpayer money. He's not qualified to hold the job that he's holding. And then he's turning around and rewarding her with fancy cruises, trips, and dinners. Right? So she's in a bit of a pickle right now, and she's trying to talk her way out of it. She thinks she's smart enough to just get right out of it. Let's see if she's right. Here's some of her remarks today. This is Fanni Willis a short while ago.
But I always have cash at the house. That has been, I don't know, all my life. If you're a woman and you go on a date with a man, you better have $200 in your pocket. So if that man acts up, you can go where you want to go. So I keep cash in my house. And I don't keep cash.
You know, they have credit cards in 2024 or even 2019. I remember, do you remember 2019? They had credit cards back then. In fact, if you don't want to do it on credit, you can do it on debit if you'd like. You don't have to keep $200 in cash on you. Driver doesn't carry more than $200 in cash. Woman doesn't carry more than $200 in cash. She says, look, if you go on a date with a man, you never know how it's going to go. You got to keep $200 on you just in case.
Cash is good in my purse like I used to. 'Cause I don't go on many dates, but when you go on a date, you should have cash in your pocket.
She's in a committed relationship right now.
So my question was, where did that cash originally come from, if it didn't come out of the bank?
Cash is fungible. I've had cash for years in my house. So for me to tell you the source of when it comes from, when you go to Publix and you buy something, you get $50, you throw it in there. It's been my whole life.
I love this playing dumb portion of her testimony. Where did the cash come from? When did you earn it? When did you take it out of your bank account? She's not answering any of these questions. She's just saying, it's just like, you spend money, you don't remember exactly which paycheck you got it from.
Source of when it comes from, when you go to Publix and you buy something, you get $50, you throw it in there. It's been my whole life. When I took out a large amount of money on my first campaign, I kept some of the cash of that. Like, to tell you, I just have cash in my house.
Wait, what'd she say about her campaign? How much money? She took a bunch of money. I'm just making sure she's not admitting to some other crime.
I took out a large amount of money on my first campaign. I kept some of the cash of that. Like, to tell you, I just have cash in my house. I don't have as much today as I would normally have, but I'm building back up now. So you just put money in. It's a very good practice. I would advise it to all women.
So you can't identify.
Why women? Why women in particular? What's the deal with that and cash? Why not men? It might be good to keep some cash around.
When you came into this cash or where the cash came from?
I didn't say I couldn't identify it. No, nobody gives me anything. I am sure that the source of the money is always the work, sweat, and tears of me. What you asked me for is, when did the money go in there? What I am trying to tell you is, so I got divorced in 2005 from my husband. No. It's important. You said, where did the money come from? And I need to tell you where the money came from. And so for many, many years, I have kept money in my house. That money in my worst days has probably only been $500 or $1,000. At my best days, I probably had $15,000 in my house at cash. At all times, there's going to be cash in my house or wherever I'm laying my head.
The money that you paid Mr. Wade, the cash, in October of 2022, you do not know where that money came from.
I do know where it came from. It came from my sweat and tears.
You know which job it came from. Did it come from Fulton County or did it come from a private job?
It came from, what are you talking about? So it could have come from a private job because before I was DA, I was in private practice.
She's just playing games. She's just playing games here.
So I earned money during that time period that's probably in there.
You don't know.
I mean, look, the core of this question, this roundabout, stupid exchange is, like, there's a paper trail for the money. Like, you took it out at some point. Obviously, it came out of the ATM. So that was moments ago. This is back live now.
If I heard you correctly, you moved into what I will refer to as the Yurti condo in either March or April of 2021.
That was
correct?
her friend.
Sometime between late February and April, yes. I don't. Just so we're clear, yes. But in that time period, you're in the ballpark. We're in the ballpark.
And is that Yurti condo? Would you say that it is in Hapeville?
It is in Hapeville, yes, sir.
And you moved in there for safety reasons?
My father. Yes, I moved in there. We were concerned. My father was terribly concerned about me continuing to live at the house. And so they were clear. People came to my house at 5 o'clock in the morning about the police brutality cases, saying I was going to have a wake-up call. There were security threats due to gang cases, and there were concerns due to that was at the very beginning of this, looking into that. And so for all of those reasons and what was happening, my father wanted me out the house, and begrudgingly I left.
Okay, so the answer to the question was yes for safety reasons, correct?
Those were all of the things that caused the safety concerns. I'm sorry.
I'm not questioning whether they are or are not safety concerns. I just asked that you moved into this condo, the RT condo,
right,
for safety reasons, right?
Yes.
Okay. At the time that you moved into the condo, be it from February to April of 2021,
yes,
was your father still living in your house?
Right, because my father...
That's all I ask you.
But I get to explain the answer, sir.
I don't know if there's an explanation. If I ask you, was your father still living at your house, the answer is either he was Or he wasn't?
Yes, but you are going to get to argue at the end of this, as we both
I'm
know.
not gonna argue
And so
anything.
I
I'm
would
gonna
like to
ask-
be able to explain why.
Oh, man,
I'm
she's
gonna-
troubled.
Yes, because my father is an older gentleman. He was worried about COVID, and he stayed.
What does that have to do with
Ms.
anything?
Willis, I'm going to have to say that's the second time. Whenever we have to put a pause, you stop testifying, okay? You'll have a chance to explain yourself. The question was whether your father was not staying there at the time, and you're clarifying that in your answer as well. You can have a brief clarification, but it shouldn't be something that reaches well beyond the question.
This is
All
the
right,
judge.
Mr. Shadowell, you can re-ask the question. We'll see where it takes us.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
The judge scolding her for how she's
Was your
answering them.
father still living in your house at the time you moved to what I would refer to as a Yurty condo?
Yes, sir, he was, due to his concerns related to COVID.
Okay. The safety concern was that there was potential danger at your house.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Isn't that wild? So,
Yes, my address had been exposed, so yes, there
so
was.
COVID was the greater threat than the gangs of people who were about to attack the address.
House in the time period after you went to the Yurty condo was still in danger, correct?
Yeah, well, no, he did.
I think you have to. It's your attorney, Ms. Willis. Sorry, Mr. Potter, your objection is speculation
Yes.
to the question of
Speculation.
whether someone was still in danger at her condo.
Just let her answer the question.
Or Mr. Sadon wants to rephrase.
This is amazing.
Yeah, I was able to understand it.
I've got
So
the
Fanni
objection.
Willis's attorneys are raising objections, and she's trying to blow through them. She doesn't even care that her own attorneys are raising objections.
Can, now that the objection's been withdrawn, can you try to answer that question?
Yes.
Was there still a safety concern
I was-
for people staying at the house?
Yes, I was very concerned about my father still living at the house. However, if you have dealt with an older gentleman, he was not leaving the house, despite my urging him that I thought he should leave as well. He did not want to leave the house because he was particularly worried at his age about COVID. But that became I don't want to say
This
I was
stinks,
not
doesn't
happy
it?
with that decision of my father's, but I can't ultimately.
So the claim is she had to evacuate the home because she was worried about physical violence coming to that address, but she left her father behind and he had to stay inside there because COVID was the greater threat.
Your children stay at your house.
So I don't think that they were there at that point. Certainly my baby wasn't there.
I'm talking about this entire period. We're talking about, if I remember correctly,
Oh, this
you'll
is
correct me,
interesting.
I'm sure. You said that you stayed there at what I would call the Yurty condo until January of 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm asking you in that period, which would be February to April of 2021 until January of 22, did any of your children stay at your house?
And you don't have to yell at me. I'm able to understand. So I would ask you to not yell at me. That being said, I don't actually expressly remember, but I can tell you, since I have left my home, there have been times my oldest daughter came in. But I can't tell you with certainty the time window that you've said, if they did or not. So I don't want to speculate to that. But there was some time that my oldest daughter came back. Whether it was that period or after I left the Yurty residence, I'm not sure.
Oh my
okay?
gosh.
Okay, so if I continue to go into more detail on this, you're not going to be able to give me an answer of whether or not, in fact, any of your children were still at the house or stayed at your house during that time period, correct?
What I can give you clarity of, so that we are clear, is from the time I moved out in February-ish of 2021, after I left there was a time period that my oldest daughter came back. But if you're asking me, was it in that window or after, I just don't have a recollection of that because, you know, your kids come and they go.
Oh, she got
So
Biden
I
brain.
don't remember the specific time period, and I apologize for that.
Did your children ever stay with you at the Yurty condo?
Like maybe a night,
Okay.
like for a girls' night or something, but live with, no.
All right, so that's where we are at the moment. That's the live feed of Fanni Willis trying to survive I think, wow, really, you got to give credit to Trump's co-defendant here. Was it Michael Roman? The co-defendant here and their team for digging up this information, demonstrating just the gross corruption going on in the district attorney's office. Remember, she ran for office claiming she wouldn't have this kind of corruption, that, in fact, she would never date the people who were working under her. Remember this?
And I certainly will not be choosing people to date that work under me. Let me just say that. We are at a place in society where things happen in people's relationships, husband and wife. Sometimes there are outside relationships. I don't think that that's what the community is concerned about.
That was a tell.
Although there might be a moral breaking in that.
Yeah, there might.
I am very private. When I supervised Mr. Body and Mr. McAfee, they didn't know who I was dating, but I can assure you I was dating somebody. So that I kept something private, that's my private life, is not any mystery to anyone. It's
At
like
taxpayer expense, of course. It's not private at all. It's, our money.
a woman doesn't have the right to keep her private life private. And I'm speaking on this because there have been all these intimations.
You still haven't answered the question, Ms. Willis.
I'm sorry, what was the question, Your Honor?
Is there anyone else who knew about it? And then you can explain.
I don't know. I don't think so. I certainly didn't go out telling my business to the world.
So, the best of your recollection.
Well, it was kind of the world's business that you weren't telling us about.
You didn't inform anyone on the prosecution team that the individual that you had chosen to lead the prosecution team had a personal relationship with you.
So
Is that correct?
That's inaccurate. Your question is inaccurate.
What?
Because you stated that the person I chose, we had a personal relationship. So we had a friendship. We have all these distinguishing factors. Remember, when I chose him in November of 21, first of all, let's get this straight. Mr. Wade was not actually my first choice. That's no insult to him. No, it is you because of the way you phrased the question. You said, when I chose him, I didn't inform people of a personal relationship. We have defined personal as romantic. It is an inaccurate way to state the question.
And I will certainly restate it so it is very accurate.
Okay. They're still fighting right now. It was her friend earlier this morning, or her former friend now, who said, they were doing the dirty back in 2019. This has been going on for quite a while. And now she's playing semantics games and apparently still lying, this time from the stand. I don't think this is going to end well for her. I guess we'll see. Coming up, Donald Trump's attorney, one of them, Will Scharf, joins us. He's also a candidate for Attorney General in Missouri. A lot to discuss. Hey, good afternoon to you. 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, top of the hour, John Daniel Davidson is going to be with us from the Federalist. We'll talk to him about the real threats to national security in the country and why Congress does not have its eye on the ball. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. So much courtroom drama today as Donald Trump tangles with election meddlers Alvin Bragg and Fanni Willis in the very same day. There's a case in Manhattan set for the Alvin Bragg case, a trial set now for March 25th. That happened today. That's, if you can believe it, the single most ridiculous case against Trump. And there's a lot of ridiculous cases. And then, meanwhile, Fanni Willis is right now fighting to keep her job as we speak. She's on the witness stand at this very hour, insisting that she's not corrupt and that she hasn't been stealing money from the taxpayers and paying her lover and all sorts of things. So we'll keep an eye on that. Additionally, yesterday, Jack Smith, the election meddler bought and paid for by the Biden administration, begged the Supreme Court to get the Trump trial started already. They're trying to go after him. They say that Trump tried to overturn the 2020 election. That's the Jack Smith case. And meanwhile, Donald Trump is saying, look, I've got executive immunity here. I was president of the United States during all of the very legitimate actions in question. I'm entitled to immunity related to that job. Jack Smith says, no, the court is currently trying to handle this. And Jack Smith says, hurry it up already. But he won't tell anybody why he wants to hurry. Will he? Let's bring in Will Scharf now, a former federal prosecutor, attorney for President Trump, and a candidate for Attorney General in Missouri. Sir, good to have you with us.
Great to be with you, as always.
It's amazing. So this Jack Smith filing yesterday where he's begging the Supreme Court to hurry up and resolve all of these immunity questions already. I noticed that there is no explanation as to why they need to hurry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, I think you need to remember back in December, Jack Smith's team begged the Supreme Court to take this case immediately, that this was a really important issue, presidential immunity, that the Supreme Court had to take it. Now Smith's team is saying the Supreme Court shouldn't take it. They should kick things back to the district court and allow trial to proceed. The only way those two contrary positions make sense is if Jack Smith's only goal is getting this case on trial before the 2024 election. Prosecutions are never supposed to be based on a political timeline. They're never supposed to be brought to influence an election. And Jack Smith's team are now basically admitting that the whole purpose of their prosecution, the public interest in their prosecution, is interfering in the 2024 election. And that should outrage every single American of all political stripes.
Let me read the language from Jack Smith yesterday, and to give everybody a sense of how ludicrous their position is. They say this: delay in the resolution of these charges threatens to frustrate the public interest in a speedy and fair verdict, a compelling interest in every criminal case, and one that has unique national importance here, as it involves federal criminal charges against a former president for alleged criminal efforts to overturn the results of the presidential election, including through the use of official power. But what he's referring to here, Will Scharf, is events surrounding the 2020 election. He doesn't for a moment say that, oh, we've got to hurry to do this before the 2024 election, but his goal is so clear. He clearly wants to meddle in this one.
Yeah, look, when they brought this indictment last summer, Jack Smith and his team were pushing for a trial date in January, 6 months post-indictment. You know, I had simple gun and drug cases that dragged through the courts for years where you had serious legal issues that had to be addressed. The idea that this immensely complex case with hundreds of potential witnesses, with millions and millions of pages of discovery, would be brought to trial in 6 months is just insane. And the only rationale for it, the only logical reason why Smith would be pushing for that is if he wants to meddle in the 2024 election, if the timeline here is political, not legal. And that's just outrageous. So that's why we're asking the Supreme Court to step in here. That's why we're asking the Supreme Court to continue our stay of district court proceedings while we litigate fully this presidential immunity issue. And I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court sees through it and does the right thing.
How likely is it that you'll get an answer of some kind in the weeks and months ahead? What do you expect will happen next here?
You know, I don't want to make any predictions. I think the Supreme Court on this stay application will be inclined to move pretty quickly. That could mean, you know, next week or the week after, or it could mean, you know, further down the road. It really, there's a lot of contingency involved here. But the fact that Jack Smith filed, you know, 2 days when the court gave him a week, and the fact that back in December he tried to short-circuit the entire appellate process, I mean, it really speaks to the urgency that they feel. Because I believe that if we get this stay, it's going to be very difficult for them to bring this case to trial before the election, and that's why his team is just totally freaking out.
Yeah, you know, we've seen some reports, meanwhile, that the White House is frustrated that Merrick Garland and the United States Department of Justice haven't more rapidly secured a conviction of Donald Trump. How much should that play a role in this conversation? That it seems that they're being pretty brazen about how much they want to meddle in the election using the Justice Department.
Yeah, look, when Joe Biden came into office, he said we need to depoliticize the Justice Department, and he thumped his chest and said that this was a top priority for him. And instead, they've gone in absolutely the opposite direction. Maybe the reason they haven't secured a conviction against President Trump is that President Trump didn't break any laws, that he didn't do anything criminal. And that's why it took them years to string together an absurd case, relying on absurd interpretations of these incredibly broad federal statutes. And that's why I believe they're ultimately going to lose. But in the meantime, the fact that the President of the United States is publicly pressuring his Justice Department to bring to trial his principal political opponent, I mean, it's just so outrageous and so brazen. It's just a total perversion of our system of justice. Yes, and the actual threat to our constitutional republic, not Donald Trump. It's clearly coming from Joe Biden and company. I'm not sure if you're working on these other cases as well, but man, you have to be fascinated by what's happening down in Georgia today. As Fanni Willis is on the stand as we speak,
trying to hold on to this case that she's brought against Trump, claiming that he tried to subvert the election, that he's guilty of RICO violations. But it turns out she stands accused pretty credibly of being a corrupt official who hired her lover, is paying him out, and taking a lot of benefits from taxpayer money.
Yeah, I mean, forget keeping her job. Fanni Willis is trying to stay out of prison at this point. You know, as you said before, I'm a former federal prosecutor. Listening to her testimony, I'm just ticking off federal statutes that I think I could indict her under. Honest services fraud, federal bribery, wire fraud. I mean, what they did here is just absolutely outrageous. I'm hopeful that the judge down there, McAfee, disposes of this case, kicks Fanni Willis off of it, tosses the entire indictment. One point I think it's really important to note, though, is that when Fanni Willis trotted out this RICO indictment in the first place, the press, the mainstream media, treated her like she was Elliot Ness, like she was the greatest lawman in the history of the Republic, and that she was going to bring these people to justice. The whole thing was a total perversion of our legal system from the start. This indictment should have never been brought, and I hope that the people who were responsible for it are held accountable to the fullest extent of the law.
So if all of the top officials, and it's her and Nathan Wade is her lover, and he's the top official on her team, if all of the top people on this case are corrupted by their own behavior and are taken off this case, what does that mean for the charges against Donald Trump?
So first of all, Fanni Willis and Nathan Wade, I believe, are both now fact witnesses in this case, which means they have an irretrievable conflict of interest, and they both need to be disqualified. More than that, though, the prosecutorial misconduct at issue here is so severe, and the corruption of this process has been so extreme that I think it warrants dismissal of the entire case. I know that's an argument that Steve Sadow, President Trump's lawyer in Georgia, I believe it's an argument that he'll make based on the testimony today. And I hope that the judge does what's right here. I mean, you can't have this sort of thing happening in American courts. Yep. Fanni Willis hired her secret lover, paid him $1 million taxpayer dollars, took benefits on the back end, has lied throughout this process, committed perjury any number of times. This whole case just needs to be thrown out for the good of the rule of law.
And Will Scharf, I'm listening to her on the stand today. We've been playing some of it live here on the program. And she keeps explaining that, no, I wasn't taking any money from him. In fact, I was paying my end of the bargain. And they would ask her, how are you paying for it? She said cash. And they said, okay, well, do we have ATM receipts from when you took the cash out? No, there's no paper trail. Cash is fungible, she says. So this is her. It's a weird way to say that she's doing everything on the up and up. See, I'm paying on my side of this, but she's kept no paper trail, which is deeply suspicious if she was trying to, maintain her integrity.
She said she regularly keeps $15,000 in cash just lying around her home. Yeah. I mean, it's her testimony has been so weird. I can't imagine any fact finder, judge or jury would find her credible. And again, it speaks to potential, federal wire or bank fraud, certainly honest services fraud. I mean, she faces very real criminal liability here. Several weeks ago, President Trump said that he thinks she's more likely to face real criminal liability than him or any of the defendants. I think today's testimony bears that out.
Lastly, the other case today was Manhattan. We were kind of expecting that Donald Trump might actually be in Georgia today, and I was telling people earlier this week that all the reports indicated he would be, but unfortunately, he got tied up in Manhattan today with this Alvin Bragg case, accusing him of committing some sort of campaign finance violation for a non-disclosure agreement with Stormy Daniels dating back to before 2016. Somehow he's able to prosecute federal crimes or something. The whole thing is ridiculous. What can you tell us about this case? They say it's starting March 25th, but from the very beginning, this is the one that legal experts have been panning as the weakest possible case.
It's incredibly weak, and it's weak because the Biden Department of Justice passed on prosecuting exactly the same charge. They looked at this thoroughly years ago and decided that there was nothing there. And then Alvin Bragg comes along. He's got a guy in his office, Colangelo, who used to be in the Biden White House counsel's office. And they strung together this weird legal theory that doesn't make any sense. It's never been tried before. It's never been sort of validated by the New York courts. And they're going to try to put President Trump on trial this March. It's just crazy. Todd Blanche, President Trump's attorney up there, made the very good point in court today that in terms of jury selection, President Trump has had these civil cases, the E. Jean Carroll case, the business case brought by Letitia James. There's been wall-to-wall media coverage for months. To me, that indicates that to get a good jury pool, to get fair and unbiased jurors, of course you would push this trial off and wait for a time when that media coverage dies down. But instead, this local judge seems hell-bent on bringing the case to trial as quickly as possible. I think it's a violation of President Trump's rights, and I'm hopeful that something's done about it.
Yeah, rampant election meddling going on across the country. The left using the justice system to subvert our very country. Hey, thank you very much, Will Scharf, as always, for your assessment of all of this. Really appreciate your time today.
No, really great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Nice to talk to you. Yeah, Will Scharf, again, former federal prosecutor, attorney for President Trump, candidate for attorney general in the state of Missouri. Fanni Willis is still testifying right now. Do you think she's screaming right now? Is she yelling at anybody? She might be. She's been very upset today. Very upset. In fact, says that it's a threat to democracy to even give her scrutiny. Let's just check in on the live feed.
At my house, yes, sir.
And the money, when you had money at your house.
I'm speaking too loosely.
I love this.
I had money wherever I was staying. So I was not referring to my house in 750. I'm saying I had money wherever I was laying my head.
Mrs. Moneybags.
Yes, that was my fault that I wasn't clear.
Okay, so when you were at what we've said the Yerty condo, during the time period we've always discussed.
Did she wear a top hat and a monocle?
Cash.
When I stayed there, yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, I want to see if we can get through a few more defense counsel if possible before breaking for today. Mr. Stockton.
Breaking for today. I guess at the moment they say defense counsel, they're talking about Trump's side of the equation.
Attorney, I'm Alan Stockton. I don't think we've had the pleasure of meeting.
It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Madam DA, you described these various trips, and Mr. Sadow asked you about going to Washington. Did you and Mr. Wade go to New York?
I've gone to New York. I've gone to New York twice since I've been district attorney. I'm trying to think if it's 2 or 3 times. I went to do a domestic violence thing there for sure, and I was honored, and I went to the Apollo there. Those are the only 2 trips that come to mind. I went. He was not with me.
You also said that he was a world traveler and had been on many of the continents.
I've been to 6.
Have you been on any of those continents with him? Besides this one?
Where's Belize? What continent is it? I'm not being funny. I don't know.
Oh, no.
Let's say, with the
I've been
exception
to
of...
Belize with him. I've been to the Bahamas with him. I've been with Aruba with him. Don't embarrass me. I'm not sure what continents those are on. Whatever continents those are, that's where I've been. I'm sure if I gave it some thought, I would tell you. But whatever continents those are, that I've been to those locations, sir.
But not Australia or any other continents?
I don't even want to go to Australia. I do know he took a trip in December to Australia.
Did she say, I don't want to go to Australia?
I have no idea. You know, I don't know anything about that trip.
Jason, you hear that?
When Mr. Wade began working with your office.
What is that about? All right, hold tight. We've got some traffic to get to. Poor Jason. Listen to her. Slander Australia. I don't want to go to Australia, she says. Okay. Meanwhile, we just got some breaking news. You ready for this? You remember that FD 1032 form? I'm going to break you back in time now. Or 1023. That was what, 1023? It doesn't matter. The point is, there was a report, an FBI informant, a guy who's been a credible source for the FBI for years, tells the FBI that, yes, the Bidens have been bribed by Burisma in order to achieve various outcomes in Ukraine. Remember that story? That was a big thing. Chuck Grassley got the whole form released, and members of Congress looked at it. It was a big deal. Breaking news, just in the last few minutes, this guy has just been indicted by David Weiss for lying to the FBI about the Bidens' role in Ukraine. This is just breaking now. So the guy was a credible source for decades for the FBI, apparently. But on this one thing, they got it wrong. So now they're charging him. He lied to the FBI, they say. David Weiss now charging him. The news is just breaking. Alexander Smirnov, that's a fun name, 43 years old, was arrested today at Harry Reid International Airport. Of course it was Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas. Developments as they come right here on the Vince Coglianese Show.